one of those that we always say. Where is she? She's the one who'll get lost in the forest because she's flipping over every leaf and every tree.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning and welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting, October the 4th, 2022. Is there any changes to the agenda?
Yes. Remove the secondary roads personnel action from the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, meet with department heads and elected officials. Terry Johnson, County Auditor.
Good morning. Just give you election update. So far, we've received 1,290 absentee ballot requests. Absentee voting will begin October the 19th. And the last day to pre-register and to request an absentee ballot to be mailed is October the 24th. And then the last day to absentee vote in the office is November the 7th, the day before the election. So that's all I have, and we're busy in the office, so.
Okay, thank you. Colin Durst, IT Department.
Just keep busy like always, but don't really have anything new to report, so.
Okay, thanks, Colin. Sheriff Glendenning.
Hi, good morning. Update on the Motorola record management and the CAD system. We finished what they call the system provisioning, kind of the building the system to fit our needs last week. Moving forward over the next couple months, we won't be as busy with it. We've been doing like 3 days of training about every 2 or 3 weeks on it. Keeps a lot of us busy, including like IT, the jail. They've been a tremendous help on all that. So they're going to start building or finalizing the system, and then early January we'll start all of our training. So we'll train all the dispatchers, law enforcement countywide. Everybody's going to be involved in that. So we hope to have that up and running early March is when we'll go on it. So there's going to be some hiccups along the way, but we'll figure all that out. Jails population, we're up over 100. We're pretty full out there, been pretty active. Continue to work on that, but just be aware that our population's pretty high right now. Other than that, we closed our application process for the administrative assistant position and have a really good pool there, so we'll start interviews on that probably next week. And then our current deputy hiring, we've extended a conditional offer. We hope to move forward with that in the next couple months, and then we're going to be testing again in just a couple weeks. So that's we'll fill a current opening we have, and then we'll have 2 more openings at the first of the year. So we're just getting ready for that. That's about all I have.
Okay, thank you. I see when you said a few hiccups in that, I think Colin kind of shaked that.
Well, the hiccups usually come his way.
That's why he was a little nervous, huh?
This has been a lot more demanding on their end than it really has been on us. We get to answer questions, and we get to say, this is the way the current system works, this is what we'd like the new system to do, but there's a lot of back-end stuff that we don't know how to do, so.
The software has a lot of like customization and flexibility, which is really nice. You can really customize it for how your county wants to use it. But it's a lot of work, not just on us, but on their offices as well. So.
Well, thank you for both buildings.
Yeah, I think this will be the system of the future, and we'll hopefully have it for a couple decades.
Thank you.
Yep.
Zach James, Southeast Iowa Regional Planning.
Good morning. Things are going pretty well. Got a subdivision that'll probably be on the agenda next week. Got another one going up for review, and then we're kind of sitting on a whole bunch ones that you guys already approved. We're just waiting to get recorded. Waiting on folks who are doing those subdivisions. A couple other just floodplain requests, zoning permit type stuff sitting out there. But other than that, things are going pretty well. Starting to dig into the wind and solar thing a little bit more, and then I'll start working with Terry on that, public hearing too, on the airport ordinance. Get that on the agenda here in the next couple weeks, so. Other than that,
Okay, thank you.
it's going well. Yep.
First Lee, conservation.
On Saturday is our big Halloween event, so it's kind of all hands on deck getting ready for that. I think our volunteer count is up to like 70 or something like that for the Haunted Forest hayrack ride, so it should be a cool event. We've got a food truck will be there, we've got a band. It's gonna be quite the event, so looking forward to that. That's Saturday, trick or treating from 4 till 6, and then haunted hayrack rides and live music from 7 till 9. So come on out and join us. And then next Thursday, or tomorrow's our board meeting, and then next Thursday, our foundation is hosting its social Pints for Parks over at Parkside, as a celebration of our 60th anniversary. Ticket sales haven't exactly been robust, so if you're interested in coming to that and getting raffle tickets for the 60 prize raffle that they've got going on, I can hook you up.
Is it Marcus you have out at Stars Cave?
Yes.
Okay, he was, I took my grandchildren out there, and anyway, so we took a walk on the trails, but anyway, so he opened up a little early, the museum, and so they had a wonderful time, and he was great, so,
Okay. Thank you.
pass along our thanks.
I will. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Lisa Schaefer, county attorney.
We're just staying busy,
That's his fault.
partially.
You're welcome, KG.
Partially.
Okay.
No, mostly it's the fault of the people who break the law.
Yeah, there you go.
Amen.
Yeah, that's good to put it back on them. Thanks, Lisa. Natalie, how's the recorder's office?
Recorder's office is good. So the auditor's office has discontinued their service as a passport agent, and the recorder's office is taking that service over. We have not, we're done with the training, we're just waiting for the Department of State, I guess, to give us the okay to start accepting. So hopefully just for this week, maybe next week, we will not be accepting passports, so people can go to the post office for that, but hopefully in the very near future, the recorder's office will be accepting those again.
Okay, thanks, Natalie. Appreciate that. Mr. Carter, secondary roads.
Good morning. This is where the biggest thing I want to mention is that I believe the contractor is finally going to start doing some work up on Highway 99 at the Dry Branch Bridge. I'm going to say that on and off for a couple weeks. So at some point, I believe this week, there will be a lane closure starting up. I guess I'm not sure if it will be just during the workday or if it will be through the evenings too. I believe there'll be a stretch where it's all around and you just come up and find lights and have to wait. But one of the first things they're gonna do is we've gotta install some crossroad pipes, but we're gonna try to keep one lane open during that time period to hopefully avoid closure. So that work should be starting up. I don't know, they'd like to start the culverts this week, but I'm hesitant to sit here and tell you it'll actually happen. But they should, people should see some work starting up even today, I think, off of the roadway there. So I want to heads up on that because there's going to be a lane closure there. Once they finally get those pipes done, get the patches back in, I think there'll be a permanent lane closure there for an extended period of time while they're doing the dirt work. So heads up on that. 115th is all but done. That little, I guess just south of this location, that little gravel road. It's a pretty drastic change, but it's seeded and we need a little moisture to help things grow and all that. But it looks really good. Get you guys out there sometime and take a look at that. And I would mention that we are advertising for a motor grader job opening right at the moment. That was the gentleman that retired, I don't know, been a while now, but a month ago or something like that. And that bounced around a little bit. So that position that's open will actually operate out of the shed on Iowa City Road for the district that's, I guess, southeast of Indianapolis. But we are out advertising for that right now, and if somebody's interested, they can contact our office and get some more information or whatever. So, other than that, plenty going on.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
Yep.
So, Dodie, payroll, clerk?
Good morning. I've got payroll almost done for this week, so thank you for everyone getting everything to me fairly quickly this week. Other than that, just busy as usual.
Okay, thank you. Angie Vaughn, how about the safety department?
Good morning. Everything's going good. Don't really have anything to report.
Okay, thank you. Krista, how's the public health?
Good morning, we're doing good, keeping busy. We do continue to have the Omicron bivalent vaccine and for adults, and we give that on Thursdays from 8:30 to 4. We are also waiting to get the 5 to 11-year-old bivalent, so we're anticipating to get that in the next couple of weeks. And we do have the flu vaccine, so we'll give those on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8:30 to 4, and people can make an appointment or no appointment necessary.
Okay. I've got a question. I heard on the radio where prisoners are suing the state because they give them full doses that was not mixed with saline. What would that do to you?
I don't know. I heard about that a couple of years ago when that happened. I don't know what, I'm not sure that there's studies out there to show what the full dose, what I understand is it wasn't diluted and there was a excessive amount given, but like I said, I really don't know, and I don't know that I've ever seen any studies as to what the effect would be.
Okay, I didn't know if there had been or not, but.
It would probably give you standing, isn't that right, Lisa? It would probably give you standing, so you could sue somebody.
Have to prove damages first, so need to know what that is first.
Okay, thank you. Rodney Blazer, how's the maintenance department?
Doing good, just got a lot of different things going on, but nothing new to report this time.
Thanks for the updates on that too. Appreciate that. Did I miss anybody? Yes, not.
Hey, Jim, I had one other thing that I thought of that I forgot to mention. So we're managing a process for a housing needs assessment for Des Moines County. And the consultant that's putting that together, they're gonna have, and I'll send you this in an email too, but they're having a little session over Zoom next Thursday from 2 to 3 for elected officials. They're gonna do like a short presentation and just get some feedback from some elected officials in Des Moines County. So I was gonna send that to you guys if you're available to participate.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Correspondence. I have no correspondence.
Aye. What'd you say, Shane? I didn't. I do have some correspondence from the Iowa County Recorders Association. Third parties are charging for military records. Burlington, Iowa. The Iowa County Recorders Association wants to make all veterans aware that recording or requesting military records is always free of charge for a veteran. In recent weeks, it has been reported that a third-party company has been charging veterans to record these documents. Please review the Iowa Code chapter and information regarding submitting copies of a DD 214 documents below. Please remember to always contact your local county recorder for assistance recording or requesting military records. The county recorder's office has on permanent record military discharges that have been presented for recording by the veterans themselves pursuant to Iowa Code Chapter 331.608, Paragraph 6, notwithstanding Section 22.2, Subsection 1. Such records shall be confidential and shall not be made available for examination or copying except as follows. To the person who is subject to of the record, to a member of that person's immediate family, or to that person's agent or representative duly authorized in writing. To a person requesting to examine or copy a record when the event that resulted in the record being made occurred more than 62 years prior to the request. However, the recorder shall redact any social security number included in a record made available pursuant to this paragraph. To a person who is a funeral director licensed pursuant to Chapter 156 and who has custody of the body of a deceased veteran. When otherwise ordered by a court of competent jurisdiction, and when otherwise required by a department or agency of the federal or state government or a political subdivision. The recorder shall make these records available to the Department of Veterans Affairs. The Department of Veterans Affairs and its employees shall be subject to the same state and federal confidentiality restrictions and requirements that are imposed on the recorder.
Veterans are also eligible to submit legal copies of their DD 214s to the county recorder's office in the county in which they reside. There is no fee to record the DD 214. Copies of military discharge records are also free of charge. Veterans and entitled immediate family members may request an in-person or complete a military discharge application. All records not recorded in your local county can be requested from the National Personnel Records Center. For more information, please contact the Des Moines County Recorder's Office at 319-753-8221 or the Des Moines County Veterans Affairs Office at 319-752-7171. Would you like to add anything to that, Natalie?
I guess just to sum it up, yes, there is a company out there, it's called DD 214 Direct, that has been contacting veterans, saying that they can record their discharge for them, but it's charging them a fee, not only for the recording purpose, but I think for them to obtain the record. So as it states, you can record your discharge record at your county recorder's office. It is free of charge, and also if you need a copy of it, it's free of charge. If you're unable to locate the record, I have Brooke at the Veterans Affairs Office. She will help you locate your record by contacting the National Personnel Record Center and get that for you. So there is no charge to any veteran to record their discharge or to get a copy of it.
So they're using a veteran's military service, actual military service to cheat them.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Bad deal, thank you for sending that out.
Put this received.
I just put correspondence on.
Find it. There we go. Okay, we shall move on to discussion vote. We have payroll reimbursement claims in the amount of $485.36, and non-cash taxable is $113.57.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Terry?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. We have accounts payable claims in the amount of $770,139.13.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Terry?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Now we have tax abatement request for the city of Burlington. There's 19 properties involved in this. You want me to read each one?
No.
The amount?
Actually, if a government entity requests a tax abatement, we don't have any choice but to say yes. So it really does it up.
So,
Rather than, unless Shane, as former mayor, would like to read them.
I trust you guys.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Terry?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. I'll go ahead and stamp these, and then we'll sign them afterwards. Is that okay? Works for you guys?
Works for me.
What's everybody out there smiling for?
It's like sitting
I need
next
to
to
work today.
They like
Pile
watching
driver.
you stand.
I'd like to watch that stamp. I think I got. Keep an eye on this, that way I can give you. Should have that. Okay. Okay, now we have a conservation annual report. That would be you, Chris.
All right. I was told I could have till noon, so everybody settle in.
There goes Brian. Nobody will sit through his.
Need to stampede.
No, this will be short and sweet. Per state code, we are required to provide an annual report of our operations to the Board of Supervisors every year, so this meets that requirement, and it's kind of nice for us to do. It's fun to look back and see what was accomplished in the park system throughout the course of the year. So just kind of on the first pages there, we got the boat ramp done. So this covers fiscal year 2022, so up through July 1, or June 30th of 2022. So rebuilt the Big Hollow boat ramp. That was a long time coming. A lot of folks had been wanting to see that happen for a long time. We are converting Chautauqua Park from just a day-use roadside park into a pollinator planting. The city of Danville took over Waters Park. That was kind of something that's been in the works for years, really. I've been out there a couple times, and they've cleaned that up a lot. Last I heard, they were even pouring a pad to put a shelter house up. So that's cool to see some development going on in that park. It's been just kind of sitting there, not a lot happening for quite a while. We brought the Jamboree back after a couple-year hiatus with COVID and everything. Had about 500 people come back to that event. We did change the date this year. We've been having it on, it had always kind of fallen on Mother's Day weekend. We always had it on the Saturday, usually the second Saturday in May. Weather was kind of hit or miss. It was either really, really great weather or it was really, really terrible weather. And so we changed it this year and moved it to the first weekend in June, which coincides with free fishing weekend. So I think that worked out pretty good. We are going to be doing that again next year. So had some staff changes. We replaced our natural resource manager and have a new AmeriCorps who now is our part-time naturalist as well in Justin Goodman. As you flip the pages, there's some statistics there. You can see camping numbers in Big Hollow are still way, way up. Total number of people in the campgrounds have trickled down just a little bit from a high of 6,363 down to 6,109. I don't know if that's really statistically significantly different. I think that's more of a product of seasonal conditions in early spring or late winter, or late fall, I guess. I did happen to run an economic analysis through Iowa Tourism Industry Partners. They have some Iowa State generated economic calculators, and our campgrounds generate a little over $1.2 million in economic impact in this county, just from the campgrounds. That's not the parks system in total. The observatory's been really, really popular. Shooting range membership has trickled down a little bit. I don't exactly know what to attribute that to, if it's because we've got more opportunity with the indoor range here, or if it's the price of ammunition. It could be a combination of both, but seeing a little bit trickle down in shooting range membership from a high back in 16, 17, down to a high of 931, down to 658 members for this last year. Big Hollow continues to be our most popular park, with Fourth Pony Station coming in at a distant second. And then some stats on our land stewardship, our acres impacted. We generally average between 250 and 500 acres a year of private land work. A little bit low this year. That's almost always tied to CRP enrollments. Got the water quality project for Big Hollow, the watershed plan completed, and I know the Soil and Water District is working with the DNR right now to try to get a watershed coordinator hired on, tentatively even yet this calendar year, although being that we're already into October and there hasn't been a job description come out. I'm guessing we're probably going to be into the first of the year, but that's still a good year ahead of what we thought we were going to be, so that's pretty good. And we have been doing water quality monitoring continuously for this entire year. Environmental education programs there on page 9, just kind of the stats there. Those are running pretty good. We've had 296 programs reaching 5,400 people. Those numbers are still down a little bit. We're still trying to fully recover from the programs backing off due to COVID. Schools are still a little hesitant to schedule a lot of field trips towards the beginning of last fiscal year, and then just some staffing issues that we've had has kind of kept our program down a little bit. But Nature Center visitation has trickled way back up, and it's 9,500 people coming through the doors at the Nature Center there. Recognized volunteers So not just this past volunteer dinner, which actually fell in this year, but the one before. Volunteer of the year was Jim Steer. Volunteer group was Southeast Iowa Astronomy Club for all their work at the observatory there. And then David and Vicki Philbaum with the Observatory Club were recognized as Environmental Educators of the Year. And then the report ends with the financial statement. So that is our summary of last fiscal year. A broad picture of what was done, what was accomplished, and got a lot of big things in the work. In fact, I just got another $30,000 donation here this week, so. Cool. Yeah, for the college group. So moving and shaking. Happy to answer any questions you got, otherwise.
Pretty. Anybody out there have any questions?
If you guys want to view this, it is available online. We didn't print out a bunch of copies this year, but it's on our website. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Do you need any approval of that?
Thank you is good enough.
Thank you, good enough, okay. Put this in the packet, so they've got one up in the office.
Just for the record, I just spent a few days at the primitive cabin. It was fantastic, Chris.
Got some good weather,
It was
too.
fantastic.
Yeah, good timing on that one.
Huh?
Good timing on that one with the weather.
Yeah.
Okay, next we have a Class C liquor license for the Barn on the Ridge. Anybody have any objections to that?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Terry?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yep.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Now we have personnel actions. First one is for auditor's office, which is Teresa Hicks, part-time clerk, temporary. $11 an hour, and position start, I guess it's, starts on 10/4/22,
No, she'll start on 10/17.
10/17.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't get that in there.
Okay, 10/17.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Terry?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. The next one is for conservation, which is Jacqueline Goodman, part-time naturalist. A new hire, effective date 10/1/22, at a rate of $17 an hour.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Terry?
Shane McCampbell,
Yep.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. The next one is for local health, is Stephanie Gall. Health promotion coordinator, and it's for unpaid time off, 20.15 hours on 9/27 to 9/29.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Terry?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Now we have reports for the jail stats for August of 2022 and the Veterans Affairs for September of 2022. These will be on file in the auditor's office for viewing at your own discretion. And then we have the minutes for the regular meeting on September the 27th, 2022.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Terry?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Do you have any other business? I have none. Future agenda items? We got work session coming up next week, no way on the Southeast Iowa Regional Planning on your update for your solar net.
I don't recall.
I think you
We
talked to
talked
me about a
about,
month before you
we talked
came
about-
back with some stuff.
Yeah, I don't remember what we said exactly, but yeah, we said we'd come back in a month or so. So probably a couple more weeks.
Committee reports.
I got nothing.
Public input. We'll give you 2 minutes to call 319-753-8203 extension 4 or email board@dmcounty.com. We'll give you 2 minutes. Anybody here have anything to say?
You need to,
What's that?
you need to increase Chris's budget. I went up for a volunteer meeting the other day and got in the pickup truck and the door doesn't work. And they said it wasn't in the budget to fix it. And they had this wire rigged up. Do you know what I'm talking about? I couldn't work the darn thing. I had to,
Wasn't too good, huh?
no.
I think I saw that truck.
You should have drove.
I should
Hadley's got all the answers, man. You know, I'm telling you, this kid.
I can't even fix this truck.
That's the good one.
Don't start any trouble, bad man.
You guys got the easy part, I have to sign all those.
We got, Class C, I got a Menards flyer in the mail, I'll have to see if they got some new wire on them. Sale out there for you, Chris.
Appreciate that.
No, you don't.
Nobody's calling in or anything, we've got just about 10 seconds left, then we'll quit boring you people. Okay, that concludes it. Moving on, we have a work session following the meeting with Public Health, Board of Supervisors, and County Attorney. So with an aye, we're out of here.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Lori.
There you go.
Oh, careful, careful, careful. Brian, where's the same Brian's fault?
Brian.
Where's the same?
What the heck, man?
Man.
Trying to kill somebody.
here for a work session with public health, county attorney, and it has to do with nuisance ordinance. So I'll turn this over to Trent.
Okay, so what we have here is, I've been working with this over the last week or so, and as you get your, as I've been getting my hands dirty and kind of, working the meatloaf, so to speak,
I like it.
That was good.
Somebody, I don't mean to interrupt, Trent, sorry.
Sounds like a
That-
slow
that
effort.
was-
Work the meatloaf, Trent.
Though I said you never want to watch a law being made. Now I know why.
I'm just thinking, did he bring meatloaf?
Meatloaf? Work the meatloaf, Trent. Come on, give it to us.
so,
That was great, man.
Check the microphone.
alright.
Sorry.
Best meeting ever. So, what became clear to me, and what I'd always wondered as I was reading these cases, is oftentimes, more often than not, the cases would start out as nuisance cases, and midstream, they would switch and become abandonment cases. And so as I started working with these, so there's a timeline in both codes. So, and there's some compulsory elements too, so we do need to do something. But, so the timeline works where we start getting notices and nuisances. So if there's a nuisance, there's this requirement for notice, there's a requirement to have an appellate process available, there's a requirement for mediation and cooperation, all with the intent of working with the owner to abate the nuisance, okay? And then when we switch over and we look at the abandonment statute, there's a requirement that the place be abandoned for, and I'll make this bigger, for 135 days. So nothing can be done sooner than 135 days after a property is vacant. So say even if we wanted to take a nuisance, if it's occupied and somebody lives there who's not a squatter, but is the actual owner and the owner lives there, we can't go through the abandonment process and take ownership of the building.
Where's the 135 days come from? Is that special? I mean, can you make it 150 or 120 or?
As long as it's more than 135.
It has to be more than 135, that's the state.
Yes. that's
Okay,
right.
okay, that's what I'm.
Yep.
But there's no special, we don't know where 135 come from, other than it's theirs.
That's their meatloaf. I
Okay,
don't know.
okay, yeah.
4.5 months,
Sure, yeah. So,
approximately.
Yeah, I don't know how they came up with that number, but that's the number. So I think our best protocol is to start with the nuisance and give notice of the nuisance, give them the opportunity to appeal to the Department of Public Health. And then once, if they appeal to the Department of Public Health, that board hears it, and I put in there, if I look, and please correct me if I wrote this wrong, but I have the Des Moines County Public Health Board. Is that what it's called?
Des Moines County Board of Health.
Des Moines County Board of Health. Okay, so I'll correct that.
So at the top of this, where you started, is this, this would be the draft Des Moines County ordinance we're looking at now?
I just switched, so I have three things pulled up. I have a draft Des Moines County nuisance ordinance that's fairly complete draft. I have a draft of the protocol, which is fairly complete, but I'm gonna need to put in an exit ramp. So, because what I'm recommending is, and what I think the counties that have, or cities, that they start as nuisance and then it ends up being an abandoned property, I think there's an off-ramp. So in reality, what's happening is if we contact somebody, there's a nuisance. We contact the owners via the like we have to. So the owner of record, we contact the property that's there, we don't receive a response, and so then we can go and get a default for a nuisance. But I think when we're looking at that default for a nuisance, I think we also go through the process of getting an 818, a civil subpoena, or not a subpoena, basically so we can go in there. So we go ahead, get a civil warrant, or not warrant, not subpoena, gosh darn, what's the dang term now?
Meatloaf.
Yes, meatloaf, thank you.
Did I get it?
That should be the,
What about
that should be the word for the
I
rest of the
took a
year.
law class at the very beginning of college. I'm trying to.
I said, KG, I heard you guys were busy last week and you got a bunch of new people in jail. You know what he's gonna say? It's a meatloaf weekend, dude.
Yeah.
Meatloaf.
Yeah, no, anyways, that's not searching it. But, so we can go in and, we're at 808-14, yeah, building, so we get an administrative search warrant so that we can go in, and so that'll be with our designee, whether that's Russ, or whether that's somebody from the city, or whether that's 123 ABC Corporation, whoever that is, that'll be the designee, and the Department of Health is who we have set to pick that. You guys can have some say, because you have oversight. But the way it's drafted, it's the Department of Public Health or their designee, so they, and you guys can designate whoever you want. So that way, if, say, we start working with Ross, do it for a couple of years and say, hey, let's try working with the city, or vice versa. I've drafted it so it'll work either way. But what I'm gonna recommend, and what I wanna put in for the off-ramp is, if we get to the point where we're defaulting on the nuisance, we then apply for this 818 or 808 search warrant. So that way we can go in, and with that search warrant, they can walk in along with somebody else. We want at least two people there. We could have a deputy with them, frankly, if that's what they want, to execute a search warrant. And they can walk in and go through the building, video it, and make a determination, is that building a nuisance or not? So,
This is only after the 135 days, right? This is 136 when you can exercise 808 and 14, whatever.
yeah, we're gonna have to wait. But I think before we spend the money, I think, because part of the concern is if we just do nuisance, if we just go through the nuisance process, we can simply go through the nuisance process, abate, and then add it to the taxes. And that's a separate statute, we can go through it, we have the ordinance put together right there. If we think there's a legitimate taxpayer that's gonna pay those taxes, might be the easiest way to go.
If we go back here to the first slide, where you have the top of the 1, 2, 3 definition of nuisances, I think that's a little broad. It's got any way that,
I think it was on
So
the other.
this is for abandoned and unsafe buildings.
okay, well,
So-
but if we have a nuisance ordinance, you had a definition of nuisances on the first slide we looked at.
Sure.
You know what would be a nuisance to you might not be a nuisance to me.
That's whatever is injurious to health, I don't have a problem with that.
So,
Indecent, offensive to the senses, an obstacle to free use of property so as to essentially interfere with the comfortable enjoyment of life or property. I've got a problem.
With the-
You're gonna have a bunch of nuisance if they think we've got like a city that my neighbor needs his yard cut, or he's got weeds, or he doesn't cut it off enough and we have mosquitoes. It looks ugly when I have company.
Or they don't have gravel on the road.
They
you
don't
got a
have
bunch of
gravel on
dust.
the road, there's dust on this. Anyway, so I guess, I don't have a problem with something that's injurious to health or a fire hazard or that sort of thing. But some of them, we're on number 2, dense growth of weeds, vines, or vegetation.
I'd have a problem with that.
I'd like to have it, needs to be the health, the safety, fire hazard, you know, down in 3, you know, you've got an accumulation of stuff that constitute a health, safety, or fire hazard. I'm saving time for the Board of Health about the time they have to deal with everybody in the county that doesn't like that their neighbor has milkweeds in their backyard for butterflies or whatnot. I'm not comfortable with that. I would like to focus it just on, whatever Jim and Shane think, but I'd like to focus it on health, safety, you know, fire hazard, that sort of thing. Just something that's offensive.
So which one were you thinking was just?
Well, right up that first one, definition.
And decent or offensive to the citizens, is that the
Yeah,
problem
well,
with?
actually, the only thing I've shown me injurious to health. The rest of it, you could get rid of. And I don't know, maybe the following you needed that to be nuisances. But, and you can put whatever injurious to health or a
Health or
fire
safety.
hazard or
Health or safety, there you go.
health, safety, something like
There you
that.
go.
Yeah.
Just so
Because
that
you're
it's
breaking it down afterwards.
pretty narrow. Just to try to get rid of
It's injurious to health, safety, or a fire hazard.
Yeah.
See, that works for me, and then again, you're breaking it down.
Yeah,
So,
they-
but on number 2, are you gonna deal with number 2 then, Tom? No.
Well, I don't know, dense growth of weeds, then you're gonna get into, that's pretty subjective.
Yeah.
If you've got weeds that are a safety hazard, because you're gonna have people that, they're gonna have brush and weeds out there, and that's just the way they have.
It's not a pretty look, but it's
Well,
not dangerous.
It's not a pretty look, but you're out in the county.
Bush around my house, it's a safety hazard. You go
Well,
there, it's gonna.
Mr. Broker never plants anything small enough I can mow over.
So do we wanna remove 2?
Well, and yeah, well, right below, it's got any accumulation of decayed animal or vegetable matter, garbage, trash, rubbish, rotting lumber, junk. 3, you know, that's, I think that covers anything would be number 2, because if you've got a dense growth of all wood, weeds and stuff, that's it would fit under number 3, I think. I don't think we need number 2.
Okay. Still moving over.
Number 4, when you're getting on number 4 there, I might have an old car sitting out in my field. My neighbor don't like it. I don't like that.
I agree.
That's my car, it's sitting out there, might wanna resort someday.
There ought to be a way to more define that, I agree, because everybody out in the country's got an extra vehicle.
Yeah.
Or a truck or something sitting somewhere.
Refrigerator, ice box, that, we'll throw it in the ditch, Carter will get rid of it.
He lives for stuff like that.
And the recycling center would better get along
I
with
mean, it depends on how you define it, but it says accumulation now, to me, that insinuates that it's not just like one car sitting there, I mean, you got a lot of.
True, but what's the accumulation?
Now, where do you draw the line, I don't know, but I mean.
But that's gonna be covered under number 2.
But
And
it's
you
not.
talk about trash, junk, anything like that. If you've
Which
got
constitutes a
a half a dozen
or fire hazard.
70-year-old cars out there, that would be junk.
Well, the goal of this was safety, you know, remember,
Yeah.
go back to that when you start reading this and think, is there really something there? I would rather you be really tight and then have a scenario come along where you're like, oh, maybe we should include that, than be really broad and have a mess.
People
So-
are gonna look at this and say, I live next to Broker, he doesn't take care of his property or something like that. I wonder if there's anything in here that I can make his life miserable.
Well, and I think you're right, when I said there's a compulsory element, which we hadn't talked about, but the newer of the 2, 657A, abandoned buildings, has this compulsory component where anybody can make a complaint, so like these 3 that we've been contacted with, and we're supposed to have a responsible representative is the terminology they use, and we're using this NCO, nuisance compliance officer, as that responsible entity. Now, we're supposed to have somebody that goes out and checks on those within 30 days and then files a report. And so that's part of what we're working in, so that way we're complying with the board. So you're right to say that a private citizen coming and complaining, if we make this tighter, then that NCO, that nuisance compliance officer can say, hey, look, this is what we've got. That's not a oh gosh, not that.
Right, incidentally, Kevin.
But
is
that's
there
not a nuisance. So you're right, to tighten, if we want it tightened, the quickest way to tighten it is here, so that way when that nuisance control officer goes out and does an inspection, that's not a nuisance, and according with the board of supervisors, these are the things we want to abate in the county, and
That'll eliminate nuisance calls to the nuisance inspector that does. Kevin, do they have, and I see it here, is there a law, I'm just curious, and I know they talk about abandoned refrigerators and freezers that kids would get into. Is there a law that those are supposed to be locked? Or I mean, have a padlock on them or anything?
Wow.
I just wondered, and I don't have a problem, I know
think
that's.
that might be covered somewhere. I'd have to research that. There's, I mean, the
I don't know if it's
code
locked, but
in
it's
general
just-
says improper improper disposal of solid waste.
Uh-huh.
So you can't, this is always like the area we're trying to move through is, are you disposing of that waste, or is it like you just keep a debris in your yard? Like some people might have a couch on their front porch, which nobody likes to see, because it sits there and it deteriorates. But do they sit on the couch, or they actually dispose of that item as solid waste? So you can't do that. You can't have an unregistered solid waste disposal. You can't put trash out in your yard. That's against the law. You have to dispose of it appropriately. So if it's, I know that would be covered. If they put it out there and it's disposed of, then you can't do that. But I do think there might be something in the code somewhere that talks about those dangerous containers.
I thought they had to be taped up or doors taken off. I remember something like that.
I think that's accurate, but I'm trying to remember if that's like a city ordinance or if that's an actual
Well,
code.
that was city, yeah, I don't know.
And I don't have a problem with when you've got something like abandoned fridge that's obvious like that, that's pretty clear that you can go out there and say, they've got 3 old refrigerators out here laying on their side, that you can open the doors without locks or something like that. So that's and open and unguarded pits, wells,
They've got to be on that guy's property to find all that.
there's somebody that's seen people go through holes they didn't know that were there. That's a deal. All that, maybe something, that looks like we're kind of limiting it to public health or public safety or fire hazard things. Or we got anything, Brian, does anything else and look in there that isn't in that vein?
The house out north of town that they called on, and it's sitting back there, and they called because it looks like it's abandoned, and that. They just don't like looking at it.
Well, when the wind blows, the glass, so it's gone through a fire and the glass is broken. And so when the wind blows, the glass blows, so it's partial, the windows are half there. And so when the wind blows just right, pieces of that glass fly into the neighbor's yard, and they've got little kids.
Oh, I'm not talking about that one.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
talking about the one, there's one out here toward the golf course.
Oh, okay.
And it had been in a fire or something, and it's just sitting back there on this guy's property. The lady that came in here that time, she said,
yeah.
It's an eyesore to look at. That was her main problem, driving by that, an eyesore. We don't wanna get into anything like that, that.
I don't.
Just because she don't like to look at it,
I
I
think
don't wanna
that would
chastise
be
that.
exempt because
Huh?
of the farm unit or the agricultural property.
What's that?
I think that would be exempt under this because of the agricultural property. Is that accurate? I haven't read the ordinance, but the way the code reads is that if the structure's on agricultural property, which that is, then it would be not, the ordinance wouldn't apply.
I think the ordinance applies to that one that I took pictures of, that I
Agricultural
sent you.
purpose. So if we have a house on ag property, I think we can enforce there. If we have an apartment building on ag property, you can enforce there. If you have a barn that's about to fall over, that gets, or a corn bin that's about to fall over, that's dangerous. Corn bin that's about to fall over, that's dangerous. But that, I don't think we can do anything about those things.
So I want to say, I don't want to bother any of that, just because somebody don't like looking at it when they drive by it. But the house you're talking about, yes. And the glass and the shingles, I just talked to Ronnie before we came in here. We don't know, he sent them in to have an analysis done on the siding to see if it's got asbestos in it.
If we look at number 6, any structure deemed to be a fire hazard, would that matter? And it's one thing if you've got in Yarmouth and it's next to other buildings or something like that, so it would be a fire hazard to surrounding properties. But if it's an old hog house in the middle of a field someplace that's the roof's falling in, that would be exempt.
My personal belief is we have freedoms and liberties.
Yeah.
And when that's on your own property, I believe in that. But your freedoms and liberties can't impose on somebody else on adjacent property. So if that smell, if that danger reaches your neighbor, then that's not right. So to me, that's where we have to step in. If it's an area where it is going to lower the quality of life to your neighbor, and I'm not saying, well, I can see that barn over there on the field and I don't like the look of it. I'm saying like when those things start imposing on you.
Well, and that's kind of what I mean. Do we need something to determine if it be a fire hazard to adjacent property or property owners? In other words, so something that's covered in a.
That was my example. I said proximity is a factor.
Yeah.
When you talk about the example of the glass and having in an unincorporated town and that blowing into the neighbor's yard with children, that is a different deal than a 40-acre where it's sitting in the middle.
Yeah,
And keep in mind, the only way in this is a hazard is if you're trespassing on somebody else's property. Because, I've got an old block silo that burned out when my grandpa was alive. I certainly don't remember, I wouldn't have been alive. And if you looked at it, nobody will take it down because the harvest store is sitting right beside it, and it could hit that, which is I still use for grain storage. But if you look at it, somebody, if they could actually see it, which means they were on my property, because that's the only way you're gonna see the rest of it, it's gonna look like an old burned out brick silo, and you could make an argument that it could pose a safety hazard. Now, you get into the ag and it's exempt, but it's a really weird line in there, but it's one that I think's gotta be figured out and defined, because it's otherwise, when you just say determined to be a fire hazard, that means the phone calls, once they figure out the system, no longer come to, it's gonna go to the fire chief, hoping that they can get it declared a fire hazard. So there's gotta be something there. The only other thing, I have one question, just see if in my head. So number 5 says something about unused basements. Would that be remedied if they put up, it says unguarded at the beginning of it. If they, in that situation, is that remedied if they put up a fence around it? Is that unguarded mean a fence?
So yeah, in all these cases, with the nuisance, the initial requirement is that there's mediation and abatement allowed, authorized 30 days to abate and mediation. So that mediation abatement, it could be, hey, you've got a well that's within 10 feet inside your property, away from a property line, let's cap it before somebody gets hurt. Or, putting a fence around it, or there's a lot of different ways, and some cost a little, some cost a lot. But all of that, yeah, so abatement's always the first, and it's required. It's required by the procedure we have following this, and it's required by state code as well. So, yes, that's a good question.
Is there something we can use when we're dealing with proximity to the physical eye and the physical smell? I mean, if you can get on, I was looking through my binoculars and they got something out there. Well, I'm talking with your actual eye that you can see it. You know what I'm saying? It would I would think
Easily visible from the roadway or, I don't know, I guess, now, you've got that one where it says freely accessible from any public roadway. Is there a definition
Yeah, we're
to
talking
that?
about pits, is that one?
Well, that one, but no, but Shane, that makes sense, he's, like you said, rather than somebody with nothing else to do besides.
It's like Brian's deal, it's right in the middle of my field. Well, who's complaining
Or
about that?
or
Who
going
even
out
knows
there
about that?
at 11 o'clock at night with a flashlight and see what's there.
I mean, I agree with what Kevin said, where I'm all about we're not a zone county. So you have a freedom, you have your property. I don't agree with how some people keep their property, but I don't mind this concept. It's just somewhere, where's that line and how do you find it? And it's a big task. I don't mean that as a.
I think the vision might be just too broad, but I think if there's debris, if wind is moving items, if those items move off of your property, then you haven't secured that appropriately. If the smells move off your property, then it's unsanitary. I just don't think you should be able to impede on the property of others.
No, and I agree with that, but if somebody's driving past a place, going to town, and you can smell something, it's like, man, there's a terrible odor. You can smell it from my house. That's a problem. You know what I'm saying? I mean, where it talks about senses, because that's one of our deals on there. It says decaying animals or something like that. So if they've got crap like that it's so bad, you can smell it to the neighbor's house. I believe that's something that needs to be looked at. Well, it's taken so bad.
If it's the other way, you're gonna end up dealing with hog confinements. I don't think we wanna go there.
Farming operations.
I think that's why farm is just flat exempt, because when you look at this, in the 90s, there was all kinds of, there was all kinds of legislation or litigation, I should say, not legislation, litigation surrounding hog confinements. Those were a big deal. And some of those, I remember, I lived in Boone for a long time, still worked at Camp Dodge. And so every day I'd drive up and down Highway 17, back and forth, at least once a day, every day. And after we lived there about 2 or 3 years, one day I'm driving back in the fall, so all the leaves were down, and there's a hog confinement there, right off the road. Never saw it, never knew it was there, never smelled it, over the course of several years. And I'm like, gosh, this is, because you hear about them and you think that the sky is falling, right? And I'm sure originally that probably was the case, but anymore, those aren't an issue. But yeah, farms are, all egg is if it's used for an egg use, because one says egg property and one says egg use when you look at the codes between the two ordinances. Now,
What's the difference? No, I apologize, but the difference between ag property and ag use?
it's getting smaller, but so say if it's egg property, you could have a home on an egg property, right? And that home would be considered part of the egg property, but it's not an agricultural use necessarily.
There are a fair number of, for instance, hog buildings aren't owned by the farmer.
Sure.
They split it off, it's 5 acres, it's owned by a company like Tri-Oak, which I understand is an ag business, but it's a company and not, actively a farmer or something like that as you think about farming. But ag use would be the bacon and the manure. That's, so I could see that being the reason they might have put it in two different ways to take away an argument for somebody against, again, the hog side of it.
Well, they were just drafted at different times.
You didn't open your door up Friday night, or I mean Saturday night then at home, did you? The whole damn town of Danville smelled like a hog lot.
It's because it was an east wind.
Huh?
You got something different. I had an east wind and got my neighbor's
I mean,
hot building that I get like 3 times
Crystal's
a
loving
year.
it.
I had it for the east wind on Saturday. I mean, it's,
We were home, Heather had a whole production, the whole Lucas show, and, oh Lord, it was a big deal. So I was going back and forth, I cooked steaks, I didn't notice it, but I don't smell, but, yeah, so to our point, I think the reality is, there has to be some subjectivity to this, otherwise we won't be able to cover every possibility we need to cover. Yet at the same time, we need to be able to trust who we designate to be the nuisance control officer, and then we have to be able to trust the Des Moines County Board of Public Health, and then ultimately, if it's gone through that, that nuisance control officer and the Board of Public Health, they can still come to you guys and say, hey, we want another appeal. And so but I think we're making it narrow enough that it's not gonna be everything under the sun. It's still giving them the tools they need to be able to do what needs to be done.
I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but I think after we think we've got this, worded or composed, we run it by if it's gonna be Russ or somebody like that that's familiar with that, saying, this won't work, or you need, this word needs to say something else, you know what I mean? Add some words to one of the sections, but and obviously that's in the future, but.
Yeah, for sure. And I used some of their Jefferson County as the base and formatting for this. Definitely have massaged it a lot. And what's that?
Meatloaf,
Right.
so I thought the same thing.
Yeah. So we've gone through that process, and I still want to put in that off-ramp for, we'll go in, get that 808 search warrant and see, and if there's truly nobody there, and there's no taxpayer that's responding, and we think if we're gonna go in and do an abatement and be stuck with the bill, then I think at that point, we can consider whether or not we wanna go forward and move to take possession. And even if we take possession, so that process is very different in that, and I think this is part of why so many of them are tied together, is that process almost immediately goes straight to the district court. I mean, you start out in court, and you file. You give them notice, hey, you have 30 days to respond, and you file in district court, and it starts. So a lot of this early stuff where you're giving them notice and notice again, and you have the appellate, we have the nuisance control officer looking, and then we have the Department of Public Health taking a look at it, and we have that's not necessarily tied into that 657A. So I think by putting them together, say, hey, let's start every one of them out as if it's a nuisance, and as if there's somebody there that owns that property that's gonna step up and be a responsible party. And then if we get down the road, 4.5 months down the road, and there's still nobody there, then we go in and ask for a search warrant. We go in, we look, we say, okay, yep, this is definitely a nuisance, or no, it's not. I mean, if it's abandoned, it's probably definitely gonna be a nuisance. We don't know, it might be the Taj Mahal in there, who knows, right? And then we move forward from there.
Well, that 57A, when you're talking about, taking abandonment, like this particular house you was talking about with glass blowing around that, we've got some of that siding Rodney sent up, Iowa City, they're going to examine it. Is there a way that, if that comes back, let's say, if we had to take that comes back, that's got asbestos in it, we're talking bukus a dollar. Do we want to put that on the taxpayers? No.
Right.
So is there another way that you can handle that without putting that on the taxpayers? So that's what we need to know, stuff like that, because we're gonna have some of this stuff, because some of this stuff we're talking about is old stuff.
Right, and that's where that 657A comes in, where we're able to then take possession, and then.
We don't want possession of it. We don't want possession of it and put it on the taxpayers, because if we get possession of it, that's ours. Then we've gotta pay to get rid of it. I don't want that. I would never wish that on the taxpayers. I'm asking you, is there a way that we can get rid of it without us taking possession of it?
Well,
Probably not if it's
I
a
think,
family.
I think either way, if you don't take possession, to get rid of it,
I mean,
you'd have to, the county's gonna have to pay for it anyway. Like,
Yeah.
you can abate it and put it on the tax bill, but
Yeah.
nobody's gonna pay it.
You'll never sell it if there's an asbestos.
So the key is,
Nope, you'll
the
never-
key is
you'll
you
never
take
sell
it and you abate it, and then you come up with a plan to resell it to somebody else and
right,
get it back on the tax rolls, and that's where you basically
Get
pay
your money
yourself
back.
back over
Right,
X
right.
number of years for getting it back on the tax rolls.
It's not a win-win on those, man.
And it's a
not-
long, it's a
it just-
long repayment, but
You know,
it's,
my
but it's a win.
grandchildren might be about my age by the time we get it paid back, if it's got asbestos in it.
Maybe.
Does the city, do they take properties and then sell those properties and have stipulation that they have to abate it or do whatever? I mean, how does that work for them?
It just depends. They've got a couple different avenues to do that, and they work that out beforehand, but no, they do have several different avenues to handle that problem. But it's a little bit different. It's in our face here in Burlington, you know, the county stuff gets lost a little bit and things are hidden and it's not so much in your face, but I still think some of the same tools can be utilized though. But I agree with Batman, regardless whether we want it or not, if it's in Des Moines County, it ain't flying away. And it's just gonna keep getting worse. Somebody's gonna have to deal with it at some point in time.
yeah, so when I talked to, City Manager Byrd about this, it was fairly brief, but I did ask, you know, kind of how they funded it and how that shook out. And he said Eric Tislin's their super smart guy on that, but what he thought they did was they would budget $50,000 a year, and they would go through and abate and sell or get reimbursed until they were out until they were just tapped out of that fund. And he thought it seemed like they were getting about 4 to 5 properties cleaned up and then resold annually with that.
Well, we'd have to set up a line item, you know, and then fund that
I don't
line
think
item.
you'd be talking about that number of properties, I would think.
So,
Probably talking like
for something that
one or
comes
two
along like
maybe.
that,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I think we have 2 now, properties that we're kind of looking at.
That
And
might even be extreme, but.
Yeah, well, and I guess number 6, and this goes, I've not seen the property south of town. So I guess my question was, this was one that had burnt. The people that own it are not available to take care of it. But with number 6, the way it's written, and using that as an example, I don't know if there's adjacent properties. It was brought to us by the fire marshal because it had burnt and could burn again. So would number 6 written that way address that? And I'm just trying to get an idea of those kind of properties.
That one is in a more densely populated area of the country. So when I say that it's rural, yes, it's rural, but they have a whole little housing development there.
Oh, okay, so it would.
And so there's concerns.
Like off of Hunt Road, that one that again, there's houses all around that, you know, there's people ticked off because it's out in the country off of Hunt Road, but they're close together. The house that's burned down and they got trash and stuff, so.
Yeah, this might be the one you're talking about, it's the same one. Maybe, south of your.
By Rick Stroud's house.
I don't know, do you know?
Sorry,
The house that-
The one you're talking about
The
is
one you're
on-
talking about is down, south of town.
Hartman Road.
Near
It's Hartman Road.
yeah, that's where Rex Trout lives, right down there. That's who called me about it at least. Well, one of the people that called me about it.
Is that the
It's the
same
same
one
one,
that
same one.
Clips was talking about?
Same one.
You know, there.
Yeah.
It is the same,
That
so it is the
house
same
fire,
one.
That's the one that, yeah,
They
Mark
got
Crooks
stuff in
emailed me
yeah,
about
it's
too.
bad. It's
Yeah.
bad.
Fire
Okay,
marshal
so
said
there's
if
one
they
in the
start
same-
on fire again, does it have utilities going to it?
I think particularly the concern there is
People get
either
in it.
one of the owners could show up, one at any time, and the other, once he's free to show up, I suppose, and have not enough left. I think it's a concern. But I think because of past fires too, it's in a state that once the saturation's gone, it's always gonna be a fire risk the way it's put together, what's left of it.
Does anybody own it? I mean, has it been abandoned?
So it's kind of unique in that was my first knee jerk. I'm like, okay, so why, how soon until this comes up on tax lien? And it hadn't, taxes were paid. So I called and asked, say, what's the situation? Who's paying these taxes? There was a bank was paying the taxes. So I called the banker and the trustee and asked, and they're fairly tight-lipped, but they were able to say that there was a trust and they were required to pay the taxes. Well, but they didn't know about paying for repairs and stuff. So it seems like a trust for necessities when I talked to them, but again, they were very broad strokes, not wanting to talk too much about what exactly is there, and rightfully so, I think. So that one, if we went to abate it, taxes might get paid. But I can't say that for sure. But we know one of the two owners is in prison, and the other one is essentially homeless, but they're both significant substance abuse problems, significant problems with
Hence the
law
trust.
enforcement and just following laws. And
One
then
asked me
that's-
if I wanted to buy it when I took him to jail last. He did.
Real estate investment.
$1.
Is he gonna make a deal? Make you a deal?
The way he valued it was striking. It was 150, 200-ish, it was up there.
What?
1,000? Yes.
And you passed it up?
I did.
That sounds like a bargain.
To be quite honest, that was prior to the fire, but there was major damage even prior to that.
You're not a real estate specialist, clearly.
It was striking.
Let's strike a deal. You go to jail, I buy a property.
Well, I guess
If we get that tightened up, that's what I'd like to see.
get the nuisances tightened up, and then I would guess that we aren't gonna do anything, you have to wait 135 days, you send them a letter and said, okay, you've got
Well, so-
whatever the thing is, you got glass blowing into the neighbor's yard, you've, please, abate this, and after 135 days, if there's no response, then you get a search warrant, you go in, and, is that one, is the off-ramp to the abandoned, and say this has been abandoned, there's no response to our letters to, ABC Corporation?
Yes, and I think if we go through and we follow the policy, so we go ahead and we do the notice, and 30 days out, if there's a default, we go to the Board of Health and let them know that there's a default, and we do all of those steps within that 135-day period, then when we give them notice and notice them, in accordance with the rules for district court, we notice everybody, come to district court and say, hey, look, everybody has noticed, we've gone through, because part of the benefit of that as an attorney is now I'm going into the judge and I have this nice pretty folder or digital folder to show the judge, this is how many times we tried to contact them, this is our procedure, we went through it, it's been determined, it was called in by, a citizen, it was looked at by the nuisance control officer, a determination was made, and he wrote his report, that was sent, they either responded and or didn't respond. By default, this report is deemed good by our ordinance, and so they're really going off of our ordinance, and as long as we follow it, we're walking in with the ACES, what do they call that, a royal flush or something with all the face cards? We have the face card, we're walking in. It doesn't mean that somebody can't show up and say, oh, no, I'm really here, I'm the owner. But at that point in time, we can start to negotiate with them then through the nuisance process. But when we go to the judge feels comfortable saying, yep, we got it, I've read your ordinance, you followed the procedure, you've had you've had a citizen call, you've had this nuisance control officer look at it, you went to the Board of Health, they've accepted the report, they've had an opportunity to appeal, and they chose not to appeal. And I think that's important that we do that. And then if
They could appeal to this board, say the Board of Health said.
yeah, they can appeal the findings of the nuisance control officer within this procedure. And if the Board of Health looks at that appeal and they say, yeah, we think there's a nuisance, then we'll continue on. If they say, yeah, there's no nuisance, then we stop, we're done. And we dismiss. So that's their first appeal.
Beyond the Board of Health?
If they want to appeal beyond the Board of Health, they can always come to the Board of Supervisors, because you're the last result. So they can go to you guys, or they can appeal directly to the court, to the district court. They have two options. They can go to you guys, or they can go to the district court at that point. I can write it in there, so they have to go to you guys before they go to the district court if you want it.
They wouldn't have to as much as they could. I guess what small point I was making is if they're appealing this and they think it's wrong, it's not gonna cost them anything to appeal it to the Board of Health. And it's not gonna cost them, they don't have to hire a lawyer to come see the Board of Supervisors, so that gives them two routes of appeal without necessarily having to have legal representation, so that there's an affordable way to appeal it.
Yep, absolutely. So that way, it does two things, and it gives the property owner a affordable way to say, hey, somebody please look at this, as well as giving us, a good stack to say, hey, look, Your Honor, this is what we've done. We've done all this, there's still nobody there, we need to be able to move on, and so if we want to take possession, so we can abate it and then resell it and recapture at least some of those taxpayer dollars. Because if we think we're gonna abate it, put it on the tax rolls, and there's nobody there paying the taxes, then that's just gone.
This particular one we're talking about up there, they're paying taxes on it.
They are paying taxes on it, and there was some question whether or not that property was linked to their other property somehow.
Yeah.
I think they would like to get rid of the property, I just think that somehow,
But they-
that's what I got
it's linked
from
to
John.
His other home, so
Mhm.
that's what John told me too when I was up there.
They're gonna have to do something, because you're gonna go through this process, pay taxes or not.
Well,
What?
depends on how he's got his loan. If taxes get paid with that, then the bank's gonna have to start paying the property taxes. That's a good deal. That's why you can get that tightened down, like Tom's talking about, some of that stuff we really don't want to mess with in there.
Okay.
And then maybe we can have another quick work session on it, maybe get Bruce involved in it. If you're, or the Board of Health plan on seeing us help be the custodian of it.
Yeah, I will bring up the Board of Health meeting that we have next, but Matt didn't see an issue with that. We do that too for the waivers for
septic waivers and those kind of things, so the board also does that as well. So I think this would just be one more of those pieces that they would do.
Find out what they're gonna charge us to do this,
Yeah.
so.
Health and safety, that's it.
Have you talked to the city about if they would be willing to share their inspector for a fee too?
Well, just that one time, I've not
Okay.
touched base again, I think you
I
said
have.
you talked to him prior, yeah, as well. So, I don't know, the city manager seemed, he seemed interested. He said, is Eric Tisland, is that right?
They're open to it.
He said he'd have to get in touch with him and send him down. I don't know if he as an individual is overly interested, or he didn't show up, and, you know, I'd have been double booked, I don't know.
They've got the staff to do it, it's not like we would,
Eric's not doing it
we wouldn't need much of that, but anyways, but I.
They've got, their attorney does a lot of the work for them, and they got an inspector that goes out and does, so I don't know that Eric does a whole lot of it himself, but.
No, he doesn't do
I-
it, inspecting.
I'd be willing, if you, I don't know if it'd be helpful, but I'd be willing, because I know Eric, I mean, I could, if he came and even like explained their process and what they go through, even if you weren't working with them, just so you kind of understand what they go through to do it, I don't know if that'd be helpful, I can ask him to
Yeah,
come
no.
one of these weeks or something.
Yeah, I thought that'd be really helpful for us to figure out. Yeah, because one thing that Bert said when I talked to him was, as I told him, I said, you know, we might be a little early because we need to, if we're gonna take possession and really start spending money to pay, we do need a line item, I think. And he's like, well, really, he thought if we wanted to do that, this would be the time to start going out now, because then by the time a line item came in to put it in the budget in January, and then have it be, he was thinking 9 months before your actual boots on the ground abating anything was probably about, about right. I don't know the timeline. I mean, in theory, if it's just straight nuisance, you could be there 60 days later. But we don't necessarily have to go breakneck speed either.
Can we take one more look at those nuisance, those definitions? Just everybody in here, you know, that live in the county or live somewhere anyway, I respect everybody in here and their opinions. Everybody just take a look at it and see if you see anything that looks wrong or should be there or shouldn't be there, or just.
What my opinion is adding in wording that one says like, clearly identifiable, so that you can articulate on paper what it is. So it's not just one person's opinion. And clearly identifiable health or safety hazard which obstructs an adjacent property owner from the free and safe use of their own property. So in a way that it's affecting the adjacent property, not just that it's on this property, but it's impacting that adjacent property. Maybe I'm missing the point, but to me, that's what is most important. Like if there's glass, if there's even ashes that are blowing onto a neighbor's property, that's not right.
But at the same time, if they've got a barn and there's glass breaking out from the barn, but it's sitting in the middle of a field, who's that bothering?
Right.
Yeah.
To me, if it's making that impact on them from freely and safely enjoying their property, then that is the issue.
Clearly define that in the ordinance. Yeah.
Yes.
I agree.
And you have to be able to, and maybe even putting something in there that, something that's not visually appealing to the eye in and of itself does not meet this, because you're just getting way out there.
Yeah, I like having something like that in there.
Does it need to be like a certain distance from the adjoining property? So that you can say, hey, it's way out there, it's not affecting you, but it's.
To me, I think if we go out there, whoever the inspector is that goes out there and that they see, yeah, there's ash blowing on your house, there's glass that it's clearly crossing the property line. To me, that's very clearly identifiable. You take the photos, you document it, and you say, this is unsafe. This isn't fair to this property owner, and we need to do something about it. already have in state code the improper disposal of waste. I think we probably just need to be a little bit more proactive in enforcing that. People can't have solid waste disposal, and we'll be glad to get after that if those are sent our way. But we already have that ability. I think this being separate of that health and safety hazard would be good.
I think that's nice, if you could, whether you can or not, put in a line or whatever, and it's like Kevin said, you know, something that you don't like to see, or, you know, this does not apply to, what he said.
Something that's not visually appealing to the eye in and of itself.
However you put it, yeah, that maybe in there so that people don't say this is a way to make him take down that corn crib out in the middle of that field that I don't like looking at.
Yeah. And Iowa code doesn't allow refrigerators or ice boxes that can be locked. It doesn't.
It can be locked?
It says if that can be locked, then that's actually it's a criminal charge. But if they're not lockable, which I think the unsafe side of it comes from is kids would get in there and hide, and then they would suffocate.
Wouldn't be able to, open it back up.
Right. I know there's ordinances that don't allow that, but Iowa code specifically requires it to be lockable.
To be lockable.
Yeah, it has to have a lock on it.
It has to have a lock on it, okay, so
No,
and that's what
if it
this
has a
says.
lock, it's illegal. Sorry.
No, if it has a lock, so what we've got there, it says it has to be locked, that would be illegal.
If it's lockable, then it's illegal because somebody could get trapped inside.
Yeah.
Right.
If it's not lockable, then they can push their way out.
Yes. That's the theory, but I know there's dangers beyond that, or at least the concern is that kids would get in there knowingly and hide.
And then there.
It used to happen, that's why they made them for a while.
And they wouldn't be able to get out, yeah. With just probably a regular refrigerator door to do that, you probably can't open that. I've never been in one, but I'm assuming you can't open it from the inside.
Right.
It's been several years ago, this kid, and I do know he got in a refrigerator, and the other kids pushed it over, and it went down on the door, and they couldn't get him out, and he did suffocate.
Yeah. You read that
Yeah.
every year, there's something somewhere like,
Yeah.
something like that. It's terrible. So,
Yeah.
But
Maybe we should put, I don't know how you make
Hard
it
to
safer.
legislate against something that a kid can.
Yeah.
I mean, in
Yeah.
a terrible situation like that.
So this is what I put in there. And I'm a little concerned as I write it, especially we get into, must have an actual detrimental effect or risk to adjacent property or the public at large. That's gonna be hard to show. I think
Why?
if somebody wants to fight this,
Why use detrimental and not just health or safety?
okay, we can do that.
Yeah. Do you need merely, is that redundant?
I think that.
If you just have a nuisance, cannot be aesthetic only.
Okay, there you go, Jimmy.
Cannot be merely aesthetic.
Or you either take only out or merely out. I don't think you need them both. Speaking as a non-English major.
Yeah.
You got a comment after aesthetic?
Aesthetic, but must have an
At least you
actual
can
health,
still fall
safety,
back
or
on your
fire
law
risk.
degree.
That's true, and go to work for Lisa.
Cannot be merely aesthetic.
I'm sure that
Actual health.
employment relationship would last a long time. Take care, Shane.
Keep that hair in place.
You're a real jerk for that, Terry.
So health, safety, or fire hazard must create, must create maybe,
Or must be.
that's fine, yeah.
That's adjacent property.
Today, we'll do it.
So that's gonna, if people fight, that's gonna box us out a lot. Now frankly though, maybe I'm wrong, people are fighting in theory. They should be willing to go and abate, there's somebody there to abate it, but maybe that's just naivete. Think, well, if somebody's there and they're willing to fight this, maybe they'll just go and fix it.
I think it also gives us the ability to say no to, if there is that influx of, well, this is something I don't like, and this is something I don't like, that it has to meet that definition.
Wouldn't they have to prove, if they're saying it's aesthetic, wouldn't they have to prove then that it is not a health, safety, or fire?
We have burden of proof.
We have burden of proof, okay.
We have to prove, yeah, so.
We have to prove that it's an actual health, safety, or fire risk.
Yeah, so we'll have to prove that, yes.
Well, we would have to prove that anyway, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it?
Well, not, yes and no. So we're saying now we have to prove it to an adjacent property or the public at large. So it can be a nuisance and it can be a fire hazard on its own property, right?
Uh-huh.
But to say that it's then a risk to spread to adjacent properties, that's a lot tougher. Because really, as you get into this, you can argue, well, heck, somebody could have wells and holes all over the place. If anybody that's there is a trespasser, but there is an actual duty even to trespassers at common law. But regardless, I think that's kind of the trouble we fall into. Somebody, say if they have an open well in one of these kind of rural communities that, has a bunch of houses with kids running around, that could fall in the well at any given moment because it's not capped, there's nothing built up around it, it's just there. And they think it's cool because it has tadpoles or whatever, right? I think they could say, look, it's on my property, it's not affecting the neighbors unless they come on my property.
What, isn't there such a thing as an attractive nuisance?
Sure, it'd be an attractive nuisance, absolutely. That's a civil, that's a civil construct for tort law, but yes. And it would be that, and their insurance company might be up in arms if they're aware of it, but, as far as giving us, I think we would have, if it's an attractive nuisance, is by definition a nuisance, and I think given the state code, we would be able to regulate that. I think given this language, where we're putting in a risk to adjacent property or the public at large, maybe it's the same, I don't know. It's just new unexplored language. So we run into this, any district court judge can say it means whatever he or she wants to say it means at any given point in time, because it's not tested legal language. Because one judge might look at it and say, well, we put or the public at large, so anything that's could affect and could be regulated under 657 as it stands could affect the public at large, and that argument could be made.
But if the property's abandoned, it's not gonna matter what it says. Because we've reached out to them and there's nobody there to say, that's merely aesthetic, it's not actually, so if it's abandoned, where we would take the off-ramp, that doesn't matter.
Mhm.
So it would only matter if
somebody-
you've got somebody there
Yeah.
and
And they're not willing to abate it.
they're not willing to abate whatever that is, and they say it's not a, it's not a,
Right, yes.
so,
Yeah. So that would be, so it's basically our stubborn landowner. You know, that's my pile of trash and I think it's art. I had a guy one time in town, you know, when I was a brand new practicing attorney, had to go to get some paperwork signed. This dude had trash all over his yard, super excited, trying to show me all his artwork, and I'm looking, man, like, what are you trying to sell? You know? So, but he was convinced it was, you know.
and one other thing is if it says that, and so if that guy says he would have to be willing to pay to take it to district court and have that decided.
Well, this definition would also be, whatever definition we put in there would be the definition that the Department of Public Health would have to go by, that our nuisance control officer would have to go by.
But
So-
those people should be able to look at it, you know, and look at it with a non-jaundiced eye and say, this is not, or this is. So anyway, I guess, so we're just talking about a landowner that says, I've got a uncovered hole here,
Yeah.
something like that, that if he appeals that to the Board of Health, and then he appeals it to the Board of Supervisors, we say it's a risk, then he would have to be stubborn enough that he would go to district court at that time.
Yes.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is I don't see that happening very often. And I like that we've tightened it up. So so it has to be a risk to the public rather than a, you know, and I think that an open hole is a risk to the public, but like you said, be a district court, I guess I would think that if somebody had appealed it twice and was turned out both times, that they're thinking, do I want to go to public court, or do I want to go to district court, or do I just want to abate it? I guess I'm saying is I don't see that happening very often. Did you? Oh, okay. And I like the idea that it's tightened up.
I think abandoned wells already have to be plugged and covered. I don't know that it covers, I guess, what we would call like a pit or.
Yeah, like the
Old cistern or
basement,
something like that.
somebody says, no, that's not a basement, that's not an abandoned basement, that's my pond, see those tadpoles? You know? Yeah.
We just don't want Timmy to fall in anything unless they have to go find him.
Well, I guess it's not perfect, but I like the idea of having it in there that this is actually for a public safety, health, or fire risk hazard.
Yeah, we clearly covered that, that's in there several times.
And I think that'll eliminate nuisance calls and pretty much it'll make it, there aren't going to be very many people that would really, you know, fight back on that. And if you would run into somebody like that once in a while, but I think it's gonna pretty much take care of nuisance complaints, because by the time they're going to the Board of Health and the Board of Supervisors,
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's some people like, you know, you have the guy with the tent here in Burlington, or we had.
Is he still here? I sort of remember reading about that.
I saw his name pop up like a year ago, but I haven't heard much about it.
There's a little shed on that place now, isn't there?
I don't know. He's staying under the radar, if so.
Probably laying in that shed rotten.
So, So, but you'll have people like that, like we had in Indiana, we had, what was, Matt now, or what, Ken and Allison's down neighbor, you know, he didn't want us to access our sewer lines because, you know, he wanted us to pay to get access to our sewer lines, remember that? You know, you'll always have some people that just dig their heels, they get something in their head and dig their heels down. And honestly, those people, it doesn't matter what we put, they're always gonna do that, right? You know, you're gonna have some people that, for various reasons, are fight no matter what.
Quite honestly, like we said, this is something if we wanna change in a year or two, we can change it. If we find out that this is, you know, everybody's going through the cracks on this language or something like that, maybe we should relook at that.
Yeah, we can do that, easy. It's easy. Now, if we say, go to property A, you know, 123 Main Street, and say, we have this nuisance, it needs to be abated, and property owner fights it, and goes to district court, wins, and we change our statute the next year, or ordinance next year, and then go back to property owner 123 and say, aha, now this is.
Now we've got you.
Now we got you, it would probably be considered a bill of detainer at that point.
Yeah.
But for going future, yes, for sure, we can change it for future things, yes.
One thing I would like is find out what the cost is gonna be for the city and for us. I know Russ, the guys that does that, is well trained for this, and I'm sure Eric is too. But we've got two contracts with Russ, you know, right now, so I'd like to keep it there if all possible.
And you seem to think about doing it more on a per call basis?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that could help mitigate things too. And when we do run into the issue of, which is there, I mean, it's just 657A says that we are to have a responsible representative designated if a report comes in of an abandoned building or of a nuisance, we're supposed to send somebody out to look.
And we've got that, we've already got that person on staff over there doing something else, so we can break away and go do it right now.
We could have Matt do it.
In his part-time, yeah. I do know that when I talked to Bruce about this, he definitely, you know, obviously when we discussed that, if he would even be interested in doing that consulting piece, you know, he definitely wanted to look at the ordinance before it moved, because he felt like, you know, to make it easier or for that consistency to be able to, because, you know, when they go out to be that nuisance control officer, they feel like they have to have, you know, some language in there to be able to perform those tasks. So that was one thing that he had mentioned.
Right.
To look at that, to see if there was, you know, interest in Russ doing this.
Well, and I think and I talked to him a little bit afterwards, but he was really concerned with, because this is a tough one. You guys are more on the fence and divided than I think I've seen you on anything so far since I've been here the last year and a half. Because it is hard, because there are some things you absolutely want to be able to go in and say, no, you can't do that. And there are other things that are like, well, you know, it's their prerogative. So it is a tougher question, and there is, the devil is truly in the details on when we're talking nuisance and nuisance abatement, it truly is, it is a matter of degree, right? You know, how bad is it? And so we could put language in here to say, we're gonna regulate this and have what's on paper looks like the same thing, but then if you take pictures and you go out and walk the grounds, you're like, on one, you're like, oh my goodness, how did this ever get this far? And on the other one, you're like, what are they complaining about? But it's, on paper, it's the exact same thing. It's maybe trash in the front yard, right? And solid waste problems. But is it like 2 or 3 bags and they're gonna take it to the dump when they go there on Saturday? Or is it 200 bags? Right? So that's why it makes it really hard to specifically, write it down in the code section, and we do have to rely on those representatives we choose.
That's also why less is more. We've already done this on other ordinances. If you come across a situation that you learn from, you amend the ordinance and bring it in. Instead of leaving it wide open. And I think you narrowed it down, tightened it up. And that's, to me, when you're talking about perhaps invading people's private rights to some extent, in my book, you start cautiously and then go from there. Maybe there's some scenario we never even thought about, and then you amend the ordinance and you adjust it, rather than the broad stroke and then realizing that it's wider than you want. That's just me. So. But I think that's all part of this process, is narrowing it down, deleting stuff, rewording it to make it fit what you want, and then some situation will show up you never dreamed about, because that's the way it goes.
Okay.
Could this get emailed out so it can fester a little bit and then be looked at again?
What a great term.
No. We had meatloaf.
They're a festering
Let the
They're a
meatloaf
festering
fester
meatloaf.
Before you pop it in the oven. I tend to let things sit and come back to them.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if we could look at this. I don't care about another work session, I was just wondering if I
Be
could look at it
nice.
again.
Yeah.
Can you email that,
Sure.
slide to us,
Yeah.
Everybody here.
everybody here?
Yeah, I'll polish it up and get it emailed out at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So what I propose is I can go ahead and do this nuisance ordinance and the procedure as it is for the nuisance. Or you just wanna see the nuisance ordinance first and go from there?
I was just talking the nuisance ordinance.
That's what we've talked about
The
mostly.
procedure to me is all about what you come up with.
Yeah, what the.
I've got some other things festering over, so.
Enjoy that meatloaf.
Enjoy the meatloaf.
Is it okay once this goes out, do you want me to forward it on to Bruce at Russ?
Sure,
Okay.
that'd be great for him to look at it, he could look at something and say, no, that's been tried and that, whatever. Yeah, let's, be great to have somebody look at it.
What about an opinion from Eric? If he looked at this compared to
Sure.
there, or we talked about maybe trying to have him here, but that depends on another work session. but-
This would be just as easy for him, he could sit down and read that and
Yeah, I'll be honest, this is about as night and day different from theirs as you can get. Theirs is very broad, yet they have about 3 pages of listed out things, so they
That
have.
doesn't surprise me.
Okay, they have like various building code violations specifically written out in there, I mean, they're way, so it'll be very different for them. Theirs is very much, and they're looking at structure, they're looking at a lot of structural strength, a lot of.
their building code stuff, like you said.
Building code stuff, yes, yeah, very much so. Yeah, so this is definitely very different from
Then it
them.
won't take him very long to read it.
That's true, that's true.
But no, yeah, you send it, I think that's a good idea.
And I
Look
can-
at it and just get his thoughts on it.
And I can reach out to Eric as well.
Yeah,
And,
but-
and ask him.
Great.
Yeah, I think theirs is done by the building inspector, but I definitely reach out to Eric and have a conversation with him
Yeah, that'd be
We'll see.
great.
Okay. All right, so we'll do, so this would
What
be
do you think, Jim?
implemented ready,
That's a good thing, I think. Just get that,
Ready.
email that to us, reach out to Eric.
so just make sure that it's
Yeah.
all the way throughout. And then,
Let's
you know,
sticking it to us on price.
You think?
and I'll get it to Terry, can you distribute it for us once I email it out to everybody? If I email it to you, can you distribute it? Thank you.
Everybody that's present here.
Yeah, everybody probably might want to send it to Rodney too.
Yeah. Good. All right. Perfect.
He was here for the last one, I think.
Yeah.
Thanks, Trent.
Thank you, thank you.
You adjourned?
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Colin.